for your concern. So, hello everyone. My name is Abhishek. I'm working as a architect, like a associate solution architect in Apicero. I have overall 6 years of experience and recently joined Lucknow Meetup group as a leader. And this is my first meetup as a leader. Yeah, Akib, you want to go next?
Yeah, thanks, Abhishek. So this is Akib Javed. So I'm currently working as a senior associate in Cognizant. So this is our fourth meetup for Techno Group, and sincerely thanks to Shiva for this time. Thanks Shiva for joining us and giving us time for this very topic on API security. Shiva, you can go ahead.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me today. It's all my pleasure to speak, and I'm really honored. And so my name is Shiva, and I have around 8.5 years of experience in IT industry. We've been working. Currently, I work as a solution architect in Negasero. But prior to that, I have done a lot of consulting for Big Fours, Audit Big Fours basically, EY and Deloitte in shape, you can say. But prior to that, I was working with USG, and I have spent a lot of time in healthcare domain. So it's, you can say, around 8 years it has been all in healthcare domain. Apart from the project, major focus has been there. I have around 5+ years of experience in MuleSoft, and that's pretty much, I guess, about me.
Thank you, Shiva. And first of all, like Lucknow Meetup Group, thank you a lot for accepting our invite and coming up to our meetup as a speaker and sharing your knowledge with us. Thank you so much, Shiva.
Thank you, Shiva.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
Let's go to the next slide.
So the statement, let me go through this. So both the speaker and organizers are organizing this meetup in individual capacity, are not representing our companies here. This presentation is strictly for learning purpose only. Organizers, presenter do not hold any responsibility that same situation will work for your business requirements also. This presentation is not meant for any promotional activities. So I'll be moving forward, and over to you, Shiva.
All right. Okay. Can I share my screen? That will be better if I do that.
Okay, you want to share your screen?
I'll share the deck. I have the deck.
Okay, no problems. Okay, then I'll cancel my read. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, if you have any questions or anything, you can put it on chat, and we will try to answer all the questions.
Guys, feel free to
we'll go through the questions one by one once the deck is completed.
No, that's okay. I mean, you guys can,
okay,
if there is any question somewhere, please feel free to chip in and ask those questions.
It will be more interactive, and it will be move with the flow.
Yes.
Like all the questions will be clear at that time.
Ask those questions. Sometimes we miss out on some questions. So AP security and threats. So I guess everybody who has joined here is already working on MuleSoft, or they have recently started working on MuleSoft, right? And we know that we do a lot of APIs, we create a lot of stuff like that, and especially the people who have, who are developers who have started their journey in MuleSoft or with the APIs, or who come from a background of Spring Boot or Del Boomi, TIBCO, BizTalk. So the criteria and the conditions remain the same, right? We work on REST APIs, we work on SOAP APIs, and majorly these two, right? I mean, and after MuleSoft introduced API-led connectivity, right? Everything we try to develop as an API, we talk about a lot about development, about batch processing, parallel for each processing, and a lot of ETL type of APIs, a lot of different type of connectors and everything. But somehow I think we work on a model which is predefined by the client, or in terms of security, especially where we say that, okay, we'll apply a policy on the API. I'm talking very specific to MuleSoft right now. So we go to API manager, we put a lot of, so there is a set of APIs, right? Oh, sorry, policies, right? Which we can apply to enhance the security. But security is not just at that level. It is, it is much of a higher, or you can say broader horizon of knowledge you would need in terms of if you want to secure your whole ecosystem. All right. So this is the agenda in brief. It looks like that: API threats, security, securing through MuleSoft, especially. Then what takeaways we have, right? All right. Let's look at this picture. Okay, just look at this picture. And so in today's world, can somebody answer what is the most valuable thing in the world right now, apart from time? Anybody?
Data.
Perfect. Bang on. So data is the most valuable thing in terms where everything we do, whatever we are doing, in whatever manner, whatever technology we use, it's all about data. It's about transferring data. It's about creating data. It's about creating dashboards on that data. It's about securing the data, or it's about processing, analyzing, storing. It's everything. IT is all about data, right? It's nothing else. It's all about data, how you represent it, how you filter it, how you store it, how you transfer it, right? Or how you secure it. So if you see this picture especially, right, you will see that there are various levels of security. So if you talk about a particular organization which has its own data centers, its own on-premise systems, right? Just let's talk about that. So where does the security start, right? The first thing is the perimeter security. What is perimeter security? Perimeter security is the initial touch point, or the starting point of where the data can enter into a system of a particular organization, right? Like, so we have firewalls. Firewalls are at the starting, they're at the very starting of the network of the any organization, right? That piece comes under the perimeter security. Then we come one level down, then we internal network security, right? Network security in terms of your Wi-Fi passwords, then how you are subnetting, how you are using your DNS, and everything. That all comes under network security. Then we have endpoint security, where so perimeter is the outer, you can call it the outer ring. Then inside it we have network security. Then where the piece comes where we call something as endpoint security, where a particular service or a particular system is hosted and how it is secured there, right? It is the so you have to cross two barriers in terms of security. First is perimeter, second is network. Then you actually reach to a service which you are trying to use, or which you are trying to push or pull data to, right? Then we come specifically to application security, where we have deployed something on some system. Then we have its own security mechanisms, wherein we have policies, API gateways, or things like those, right? And then comes the data security. So data security here, if you see it, though it is at the very inside of this whole semicircle, but it is the, you can say, it is the core of it, where everything needs to be secured. That means the data is getting secured. Everything, perimeter, network, endpoint, application security, these all securities are for data security. But there is also a piece where in an organization, if you're working, right, and So there will be, if you guys are working on organizations, so you cannot use your pen drives, you cannot upload material to public repositories, you cannot upload material to these cloud services, right? So those kind of securities are also implied there. This is that data security where from an inside of an organization, you have to secure the data, right? And then, of course, we have mission critical assets where we want to secure them. Something critical like data centers, right? So these are, or you have VCPs. Those are strategies and everything are for data security, but those are also mission critical assets where you have to have those things secured as much as possible so that they're not impacted by any natural calamity or those kind of things. All right. So now overall security area, if you see on the left, right, we have infra level, then we have solutions for that and the data, right? How we store it, how we give access to somebody to that data, then how we are designing and structuring the security, then how we are handling the data, how we are transferring the data in terms of connectivity. Then of course we have the whole infrastructure in place for to do that, whole architecture, networking, and load balancing, firewalls, everything. Any questions here? I mean, this is the very base of it. If you feel there is any question, please you can ask at this stage.
So what is the difference between the perimeter and the network? So what is the defining line between the two?
Okay, so perimeter and network, right? So network is, you can say, how you are subnetting or how you are designing your network to provide access. So if somebody has work in Odysseys, you know that they are provided with a separate network and everything, right? Has anybody, people from Infosys, Capgemini, or Cognizant might know that. Odysseys, what is the concept of Odysseys? So it is a specific bubble where you sit as a team, and then that is specific to a project, and it is inside. It is kind of a subnet inside your whole network. But perimeter is on the overall organization level actually. So it might have internally it might be broken into multiple subnets of network, but there is a perimeter security which is implied, which is at the very starting point of the network of the organization, the initial touch point from where you can enter into the premises. So you enter the premises, then you might go to a particular network to access things, and it might have its own network security. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So drawing an analogy from AWS side, so here the VPCs have their subnets, private subnet, public subnet. So you define firewall policy
Yes,
at
now,
that level. So that will be coming as a network security, and if there are additional layer on top of that, that might fall into perimeter one.
Yes, it's a good example. So I'll elaborate a bit more on this. So if you talk about VPC, VPCs are placed where? Inside AWS, right? And a particular VPC might be specific to your organization, correct? Now, the first level of security will be where? At the AWS level itself, right? Not at the VPC level. You will reach VPC after crossing the AWS boundaries. Getting your point?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the analogy you can put into your understanding.
So the data handling, it should not be comes under the access control of it.
You can say that. I mean, part of it, you can say that data handling will be under the access, but access control is something how you are giving access to, but how you are storing that data and how you want, because see, the data has to be transferred, right? And because data cannot sit in an isolation, and so data sitting in an isolation is of no use. It has to keep moving to give you what is required, right? You might need it for some sort of analysis, or so now data handling will be like you need some amount of data which is for analysis, some for marketing, some for hiring, a lot of other things, right? So you can say that in a way that access control will cover a lot of part of it, but still data handling and access control are two different things. So if you, does anybody know if I have to, let's suppose I bought AWS license, right? And I want to update or I want to share my on-premise data to AWS. I want to upload that, and that data is like huge. Huge means like really huge. In not only in GBs or some TBs, it is like in petabytes or something like that. How do we transfer that data? Do you think it is possible to transfer it over a Wi-Fi connection?
AWS, if you're talking about huge data, so they have this direct connect which has a dedicated line and does not depend on that is more towards the optical fiber. So they will have their own dedicated connection. But if that also not suffice, so AWS provides that physical boxes
Exactly.
wherein you just put the data and it get transferred physically from one center to the other.
Correct. Correct. So you can, those are secured hard drives they provide. They will come and take the copy and they will upload. They will take to the region you choose, and then they will upload it there, like manually.
Like AWS Snowball.
Yes, correct. So those all things, right? That will not come under access control, but that is sort of data handling. How you are, because if I'm an architect and I'm designing a solution, right? If I want an organization to go to AWS, then I need to figure out how I'm going to data to AWS first, right? So those things will be under solutions, and there will be data handling. But data, whatever data you already have, and you want to provide somebody access to it, right? And in a controlled manner, then it comes into the access control part, right? Any further questions? This is important, guys. All right. I guess I can move ahead. All right. So general security framework, right? I mean, these are general, very general terms. And so we identify, we protect, we detect, respond, recover. So if you see this list, and if you try to match or map it with the policies you have in AP Manager, so identifying someone means you can relate it to somebody using IP whitelisting or blacklisting, right? Then protection normal is how you implement. So you implement client ID, client enforcement, or you have JOT token thing, or you do OAuth or something, right? Detect. Now detect is something which when we apply SLA based policies or something like that, and somebody is trying to you can say you apply monitoring and everything, then if somebody is pushing more than intended number of requests, then that piece comes under the detection, where you see that okay, this particular user or this particular organization is sending a lot more data than it is required. Then you go ahead and you blacklist them, or whatever you want to do with them. Then responding, right? Analyze and mitigate. So when you see that there is an this malicious activity happening, how do you respond to it? Like you apply some more policies, or you define SLA based policies, or you define blacklisting, whitelisting, whatever. Then recovering. So in this whole world, all the APIs or all the systems, everything is susceptible to hacking. Everything can be hacked. There is no foolproof solution to anything. There are bugs, there are loopholes everywhere in every system. Nobody can design that system which is hack proof. I guess you guys already know, and it has been in I can say trend recently. Bitcoins, right? Blockchain, basically blockchain technology. So blockchain is one of the most secured ways it has over processing, but even that can be hacked. I'm not sure if you guys have read, but if you have not, please definitely go and try to read how security is implied in blockchains. So I did set up a practice for blockchain in EY, and it was really fun. I mean, it was great. There was so much. There are so many technology stacks involved in it, and there is the level of security you see there, and the way you process it. And but still, there is a way, right? With huge processing power, you really need a huge processing power, which you know as mining, right? So even that can be hacked. But so what if something of that sort happens to any organization? You might have seen a lot of instances where some organization was hacked, or it was hacked with a ransomware. All the assets were frozen, accounts were frozen. Nobody could do anything about it. Then how do you recover to it? What is the backup plan? What is the BCP for that? So there has to be always a recovery plan. If something of that sort happens at any stage, how do you recover from it, right? So if you see, I mean, okay, let me put it this way. Do you know, if we create a technical design document, right, for a particular application, what are two major benefits out of it? Anybody? Anyone? No?
Syed, you wanna say something?
No, I would like to have the question again. Can you please repeat again?
Okay, so I'm saying when we design a technical design document, when you write a technical design document, right, what should be the what are the two benefits out of that piece, right? We all find documentation very boring, right? Especially me, but we do that. We have to do that because that's an important part. And what are two major benefits out of writing a technical design document for a particular API or an application, you can say?
Basically, we will check the NFR, non-functional requirements, and we will identify the process of data processing strategies
Right.
to
get to know about the SLA, like what is the agreement, what the application is promising to perform in what scenario. So at least the least contract, implicit contract, you can say, where we can get from the document. So not ideally happen, but just from the document itself, we get to know some idea.
I'll give you guys one more perspective. I'm not sure. I mean, you might already have come across it, but I'll give you one more perspective, right? So when you write a technical design document, first of all, anybody who wants to learn about that API should be able to understand how it is structured, how it is processing the data, what all NFRs or SLAs it is meeting, right? That is one piece. The other piece is if someday something happens and I mean, that is like a very low probability case, and it's a very cornered case. But if something goes wrong and the whole data is wiped off of cloud up, let's say, of your particular VPC, something happens, then how do you, because you cannot go back to business every time and ask again that you have to create something, right? That document should be written in a way that you should be able to develop that whole application from scratch by just reading it. It's like it should have all the steps, it should have all the pseudocode, it should have the logic, it should be that detailed. I mean, I know we don't pay a lot of attention while writing those documents because we are flooded with a lot of work, and then we find it difficult to update it at the end. We started, but we we just rush through at the end. But that should not be the way. We should always write TDDs in a way where it is detailed in such a way that you can just go ahead, start reading the document, and you can start you'll be aware of, okay, this application was doing this, I can develop this whole application just out of this document.
So Abhishek, that would be more towards the disaster recovery plan, right? So
yes, it is of course. That is why we have all SCM things, right? GitLab, all those things, right? That is why we have those backups and everything. It's a very corner case, but this was one more perspective which I learned, that how things are supposed to be written and why these are like mandatory, right? Apart from understanding the design and all. All right. Any question here on the slide? I guess you guys were able to map these security frameworks with the API manager policies you have in CloudHub. All right, I'll move ahead. What sort of threats do we have in terms of API threats and the threat to actual storage of data or transfer of data, right? All right. We'll talk about very basic ones first. We'll see. So first is the injection attacks. I guess everybody working in IT would at least have heard. If not, you don't understand it completely. But SQL injections are the very basic ones, right? It's you enter into IT, and you'll learn or you'll hear the term SQL injection. So these were the previous methods which were used, and even now, systems which are not designed properly or they have a poor architecture, then they are susceptible to this piece also. Still this goes, right? Then there is MITM, man in the middle attack. Can anybody? I mean, I guess we hear it every day. This happens to a lot of time. Anybody can explain man in the middle attack? Anyone?
Hackers.
Of course. I mean, yes, that's right. Hackers. So, if you might have learned, if you go through trainings in your organizations, right, where security or information security, everybody would have done that information security training, right? Whenever you join an organization or they come up every year with a refreshed version of it, you would have always seen that they ask, okay, don't connect your laptop to a public Wi-Fi or a CCD or something, right? Because those networks are, you don't know if how much protected they are, or somebody is already has tapped onto the network and they might be relaying all the information, whatever you are trying to transfer to somebody, right? That is MITM. It's like man in the middle attack, where somebody is tapping onto the network and he's listening through or he's scanning through all the data which you have between you and the intended target, like me transferring data to somebody in US or something, anything. So all the networks are susceptible. Now it's not like that nothing can be broken. Your security WPA2 of your Wi-Fi, it is nothing. I mean, it just is nothing. It's just that somebody has not tabbed onto that network. It's that simple right now.
With the IP spoofing and let's say a DNS lookup happening, and somehow my IP comes up in that lookup, so the traffic will be directed towards me, and also in terms of SSL connection. So
Yes.
I might be hosting a fake bank site, and the end user will think that he's interacting with the right one, but I'll be getting all the data and then using that for attack.
Correct. That's right. So it is more concerned or curated towards securing your network and securing your data while transferring. So it is more of, you can say, your HTTPS, it saves us from this attack. Mostly it does save us from that, because when we have one-way or two-way SSL there in place, then it is hard to read because the network is encrypted, the data gets encrypted with certificates, keys, right? So HTTPS solves this problem to a level, but it is not that it solves everything. Even we are on HTTPS, still things get hacked, broken, and everything, right? All right. Then CSRF attack. This is cross-site request forgery. You can say you might receive mails, right? And you click on a link, and then it just starts going rogue, and it opens something which was not intended. Right? So those are CSRF attack, cross-site request forgery. So that is why we say that don't click on links which come to mail from a untrusted source, right? Because you don't know how things will work. Because if you might have seen the websites which are for movies and all, people go to these websites, and there are a lot of JavaScript written, and you click on something, you don't know what is happening. It just keeps opening up pop-ups and starts downloading APKs and everything, right? Those are these sort of things where we say that these are CSR attacks. All right, so then we come to a bit of higher level of it. Distributed denial of service, DDoS attacks. Anybody? I guess everybody would have heard this.
Like bombarding the server with huge number of requests, and especially in the time of bots, it is so easy to mimic those number of requests and downgrading the server and kind of overwhelming the server with many.
Okay. How do you resolve it?
So generally, you can have the throttling thing in place to figure out that it can handle that many requests within that span of time. And generally, like you first kind of figure out that where it is originating from. Maybe generally it happened from a localized region. From one region, let's say you start getting so many requests, so you can have a DDoS protection in terms of a regional blockage. So you just block requests coming from a region. That might be an immediate remedy to it, but later on you figure out what actually is happening. But if it is a major attack, it can happen from any geographical region. So you kind of block it by applying throttling and specific regional firewall and blocking whitelisting the traffic.
Right. So DDoS attacks, I mean, okay. Do you think any, I mean, these SLA-based rate limiting and throttling these policies, right? They tend to resolve this attack. I mean, till a level. Okay. If somebody is keen on to doing this for your system or your ecosystem, believe me, you'll not be able to stop it, because it will flood so many requests that even after that window opens for the next request to come in, it will so basically it will be engaged, the server will get engaged in the request because it is mostly like first in first out, right? So first you get the first request, you try to process that, so it is flooded already with so many. And if you apply throttling, right? So throttling does what? It doesn't you can say it doesn't reject the request, it queues it, right? And the queue will be flooded with your these DDoS attacks, the requests which are being made from that machine or the client, right? So there is no definite solution to DDoS, but yes, we apply rate limiting, we do, and we apply monitoring, and we have alerts if somebody is, if some client or some user is trying to send more than intended number of, or there is an unusual behavior in the number of requests which are coming in, right? So then there are methods to block it temporarily so that the application is not getting crashed or something, right?
So Abhishek, like let's say DDoS can take any form. Like we can have the TCP flood also. So
Yes.
it's an attack and ping attack and HTTP the normal flood. So does in MuleSoft it controls everything, or do you have to be specific which? So let's say throttling, I suppose mostly works at the layer 7, not at the lower level. So does it hold good for SYN attack also?
Not really. I mean, you have to be specific, because so that is why we have because MuleSoft doesn't know, right, what you are trying to do, right? You have to decide what you want to control, or which request, which client you want to restrict, or how you want to do it. You have to do that for yourself. MuleSoft has nothing to do with that, right? Let's suppose there is only one user, you want to flood like 1,000 requests in a second, but MuleSoft has nothing to do with it, right? It will provide you with the infra to support it, to policies which you can use to stop something of that sort of to happen. But still, you have to decide what you want.
Yeah, I agree. But let's say I pull down. I'm sorry, I'm new to MuleSoft. I've not used it much. So you must be picking some policy, let's say, related to DDoS. So once I pick it up, I don't have to worry about all different types, right? It will hold good for all attacks, or I have to come up with a custom one, or the one solution will work for all kind. I know
That will
without
work.
configuring, MuleSoft will not know it, but if I
Correct.
pick it up, will it work for everything?
It should handle the major ones, at least. Like if you talk about TCP flooding, right? It might resolve that. I mean, I don't think it stops TCP. That's a good question, actually. I don't think we can stop that TCP flooding. I need to check that. Thanks for that. I'll check that maybe, and I'll answer in some other meetup or something.
Sure.
Thank you. All right. Then we
So
have
I generally come from the AWS side, so they have this WAF, Shield, and number of things which kind of handle different kind of
those are
DDoS.
there, of course. Those are there in place. But I'm being specific to MuleSoft, where we talk about policies, right? Because if you go and talk to a MuleSoft, developer or a person who is working in MuleSoft with MuleSoft, they will. If you talk about security, they will first step. They will take you to that API manager place, and they will show you all the policies. Okay. So that is this meetup is. I mean, this particular topic is important to me because this broadens your horizon of understanding security in terms. It's just not the API manager policies. It's much more than that, right?
So Shiva, we do have one question from
Yes.
Pratyush.
Yeah.
He is asking, do we require an additional firewall in front of MuleSoft for DDoS handling?
Additional firewall.
Yeah.
No, you don't need additional firewall. It's okay. So every organization or every network as a whole has a firewall. So AWS already has its own firewall, right? Then you can have your VPC inside, or if you don't have a VPC, when you deploy your applications to normal cloud hub, right? Even that will have its own firewall. But if you want to have something very specific, then you might need to reach out to MuleSoft to give you that kind of access or configure that for you. But normally, as we were talking on the last topic, right, that there is already WAF in place in AWS and everything, then it already takes care of a lot of things for you, right?
I hope Pratyush this answer your question. We can move forward, Shiva.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Then broken access control means you're trying to the passwords and these kind of recovery options and everything. These are simple methods to you can say break the security points of yours, like recovery options, password reset methods, and everything. Then I'm not sure if you guys remember in Windows XP. So if you have a password, you could still somebody could still log on with a few set of keyboard key combination on keyboard. So those are like small things which are now, I guess, taken care of by Windows itself. But these things used to happen, and they are still prevalent in a lot of other systems because there are not many other operating systems which are being used apart from Windows and Mac and Linux. Then web parameter tampering, I guess you guys are already aware of that. That how you you have your query parameters, or you have so if you see a URL, you'll see that there is a query parameter. I mean, you'll see the token and everything there only. It can be tampered and it can be pushed to the particular you can say server, and the information can be manipulated from there. Then sensitive data exposure. Sensitive data information is mostly if anybody has worked with PHIs. PHIs is personal healthcare information, which is very crucial and which is very sensitive information in terms of your US, UK, because these guys have federal laws, and especially UK. UK has its own GDPR policies, where general data like SSN number, or there is some level of information which is identified as personal information, PIs and PHIs, right? So those kind of data always have to be encrypted when security is implied. All right, it's a lot about security threats. Okay, we talked about problems, right? Let's
Shiva, we have one more question.
go ahead.
Yeah. So like Shakir is asking, when we deploy application in Cloud Hub, what it have firewall as policy are enough? With it have firewall or policies are enough?
In Cloud Hub, they are
When,
enough
yeah.
for see. Again, I'll go back to my initial statement. Anything which is on network, everything is susceptible to hacking, right? Anything you plug onto internet, believe me, it can be hacked, right? Now there are a lot of level of securities which are implied. So AWS has its own set of security. Then of course Cloud Hub is a subset of AWS, right? It has all the security needed, and that is so in terms to configure or give you access to design those solutions or design or imply those sort of policies. You have API manager, and you can apply policies from there specific to particular application. But on the overall level, right, even Cloud Hub needs security, right? So MuleSoft already has that in place. In collaboration with AWS, they have implied all level of securities. It's in terms of BCPs, network, and your cross-region security, and then you are still, of course, you have VPCs and everything, right? So, and I guess people who have worked on VPC, they will know that when exactly do we need a VPC, right? If you try to understand why do we need a VPC, you will find a point there which will say that you want to use your own security, or you can say you want to use, of course, you want to use your own domain and everything. That's a separate thing. But in terms of security, VPCs are more secure. The data doesn't have to flow over the internet to get to fetch data to some system, or to get the data out of some system. Everything. So security is in place already, but it's not like that. Nothing can be broken. That's the principle actually. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sure. He said yes.
All right, then let's talk about solutions. API security building blocks, right? So, I mean, starting with the first policy any developer comes across is the client ID, client secret, which is the basic level of authentication you use, right? You go to Exchange, you request credentials, you get client ID, client secret. You are able to call those APIs, right? Then these are okay. Let me go one step back. I guess people, you all understand the difference between authentication and authorization. Can somebody differentiate that for me? How it is different?
Maybe the permission for the user. Authentication, he doesn't have an access to that one. But authorization, he has an access, but up to some limit, he can
Yes.
access it.
So authentication and authorization are two things. Authentication is, you're not part of the system itself. You are not a user of that system. You cannot access that system. You don't have a user and password itself. Then comes a point where you have access to the system, but you can only access API manager, Exchange, and design center, but you cannot access runtime manager, right? Or you cannot access production environment, right? That is the difference between authentication and authorization. Then, okay, I wanted to set the context because you will see authentication and authorization coming into picture right now. Then there is a quota management. We talk about traffic throttling, right? Content inspection, where you can relate to JSON JSON thread policy and XML thread policy, right? Where you can try to find or define the levels you can accept in terms of nesting in JSON and XML. Apart from that, there are ways where you want to, uh, authenticate the payload, or you want to inspect the payload itself, that it is a genuine payload. It doesn't have JavaScript code inside it, because it can contain. JSON is just a plain key value pair thing, and it can hold any textual information. It can be a JavaScript code, right? You can do it with your policies, or you want to write your own custom policies, or you want to do it in your code itself. But ideally, it should be done at the initial level, at the gateway level itself. Then, of course, you saw content validation, right? JSON schema and XML schema, thread policies and everything. Then tokenization of sensitive information, right? I talked about PHI and PI data, like SSN number, your healthcare records, and your credit card number. You always see that whenever you talk about credit cards, you will see the only last 4 digits are visible, and everything else is masked with X. Right? That is the tokenization of sensitive information. Then we can apply bot detection, where we can create a program. We can create a snippet of code which can monitor the level of traffic which is coming from, or it can detect unusual behavior or unusual traffic from a particular client or any client in the world, right? Then we talk about which is the most important thing in terms where data always is on transit. The data in isolation sitting at some storage, if it is of no use, right? Unless and until you can use it to your benefit, to market it, or to do whatever you want to do. Then content encryption and decryption, how you encrypt or decrypt. You want only encrypted data to flow to systems, or how you want to decrypt it. Those all things come under content encryption and decryption. Okay. Audit logs. I guess if you has anybody seen that if you go on cloud, you will see that you can enable audit logs for applications, right? So what is audit logs, and how does it work, and how does it help? Anybody?
So generally, audit log will give you the traceability that who is doing what. It will be a series of events, so it will not be kind of an insert or update to an event. It will be just considered as a series of events happening throughout the life cycle, and seeing who's doing what, so you can easily track what actually happening in the system, and then on basis of that you can take call. So like in some organization you have this constraint that someone should not use this API, internal API, or invoke such a service, and still he's doing it. So how do you know about it? So generally, if you, even though you give right permission, sometimes it's accidentally getting a privilege escalation, you might do it. So you can track it using those orders.
Right. So audit logs, of course, are used to store every action, every single login of yours, and every single logout, and all the activities between that one particular session, right? Those 2 points, everything is logged. You have history. You go to a website, you run your any any application or something on a machine. Everything can be logged. Especially if you come to cloud, if you switch on the audit log piece, it will tell you what changes were made, and who made those changes, and everything is logged in terms where you log in. Everything will be logged in terms of not only your changes, but from login, logout, and the session timings and everything. Right? So this is store audit logs, and this data is regularly analyzed to find if there was any something which was missed, in terms of security, where somebody was not intended to visit a website, or somebody trying to break into some system, or trying to access something which is not authorized, an unauthorized access, right? Then we have signature validations. I mean, in terms of, signature validations means in terms of certificates, especially that your data is signed by a particular certificate, and then it is how it is validated, how data is, or those certificates are validated through the whole network. You put in facebook.com on your browser, the data it is transferred, the request is transferred to the first local DNS, then if it is not found, it goes to next DNS, and goes through various routers and switches, then it reaches the so every time. So when you open a first a URL or a website for the very first time, you don't have to really install those certificates, because those are now basically understood by these browsers. Browsers are smart enough to know that, okay, this is a genuine certificate, like facebook.com or google.com, right? But how this validation happens? So the authorization, the certificate providers, right, the CAs, basically like DigiCert or GoDaddy, these all providers, your request goes there with the certificate to validate that this certificate was provided by DigiCert itself. It is not that you have the certificate and the request goes directly to the server. That certificate is also authorized in between, where the request goes to DigiCert and it says that, okay, this is the certificate I provided and it's a valid one. Right? It's a big piece to understand, and it's very interesting how security is implied when we talk only about HTTPS. I mean, HTTPS is not a very simple thing. It takes a lot of combination of calls to here and there to validate certificates and fetch data. I mean, if I ask, okay, let me ask a quick question. So when we open any website, right, which is the first HTTP method which is called? Anybody?
Get method.
Get method.
No.
Post.
No.
Is it head or options?
That's right.
Yeah.
Why not get and post? Because to fire a get request, right, or fire a post request, you need to establish connection first, right? If you don't have a connection in place, how will you fire a get request or post request? How will you do that, right? So to know if the server is up and everything, and there can be a influx. So you do HTTP options or head to know that the server is up, the services are up and running, the certificates are valid and everything. Then again, after that, it goes. Then you can fire a get or post request. This is a very
I like beg to differ. So generally, there will be a TCP handshake happening to see whether server is up and running, right? So it will be the typical.
That TCP handshake happens. I mean, before you fire a get or post request.
Yeah, and before that, option call as well, right? So anything to do, because the option call and head call is mainly at the layer 7 where the HTTP things come into picture, right?
Correct.
So first, since an act, the acknowledgement will happen, and then the server will send the certificate to the browser, and browser will check whether it's a part of CA trusted. And then when both says all good, then since browser has this thing for security implemented that it cannot make a cross-domain call. So let's say I'm in one domain and the server is another domain. So we have to. That's why it makes an option call to say whether my origin is allowed to make the query. So because if I take the same API and call it from Postman or any other client without the browser, the option call will not come into picture, right? It will directly go with get.
Correct.
So I mean, so the option call is just to mitigate that there's something called policy also applied for cross. I can't recall that, which allows that what all origins it can allow.
Which is cross domain policy.
Cross domain, yeah, cross policy.
That's correct. So that, I mean, this question, I asked this question because generally, if I ask, and I do ask this question in a lot of interviews, and believe me, so HTTP is, because HTTPS is a very broad domain, right? And how you set up, how you initiate a connection, how you establish connection, and then how you fire those requests to fetch or update data, right? That whole understanding is a very big piece. It's not a very confined concept, right? So if I ask simply, the answer always is get and post, but it is actually not. I mean, and I talk specific about browser. That is why I told that if you go to a browser and put in facebook.com, what happens, right?
To add more pain to it, so even though you're sorted with SSL, we have seen that when you go for pen testing, penetration testing, they always come up with that you're using weak cipher suits
Correct.
in your SSL thing, and you are totally clueless because actually speaking, you are not doing anything about it, right? It is the third party vendor from where you have got the certificate,
Where you're
and
firing the
they
request.
have. Yeah, so you kind of always see that weak cipher suits, and so there are so many things going behind the scene which we really don't get to know while making any call through browser. We happily see that the response page is rendered, and that is done.
Correct. So that is why when you see an update, a patch of browsers, or even so, okay, you will understand this thing. I mean, if you do a custom connection with something which is non-public, right? Something like when you are interacting with a bank, let's suppose, right? They will give you a SOAP service, and they will give you a certificate to have connection, and you will have to set up a two-way SSL. You will see there, when you see the logs, you will see hell lot of information there, and you will understand what cipher suits are there, why they need to be the latest version. Then there is they are specific about TLS versions and everything, right? So there is a lot of piece to understand in that particular area itself. I mean, I know we generally don't go into those informations, but I think it's always good to understand that logic when especially security is implied.
It really helps in debugging. So if you're in production,
Exactly.
seen it that it is also the way you import the certificate. So there's a chain of certificate, not one
Right.
certificate as such. So intermediate certificate. So if you don't get a head and tail of it, you're clueless what to be done, because always the error comes up that SSL certification
General
chain
yeah.
was not verified, and then you don't know what to do about it because you just do typical stuff of getting certificate from CA and importing it. But
Yes.
you have to get the whole chain to really figure out.
So you will understand this when you actually so okay, when you are given an intermediate, a root, and a leaf certificate, and then maybe you have to create a combined certificate, then you understand how things are based on cipher suits, TLS versions, and when you start getting those errors actually, and you don't have access to that system, somebody's telling you, okay, I see these logs, but you really don't understand what is exactly happening at the network level. Then I guess in that moment you will realize the importance of cipher suits, TLS versions, and everything. All right, good conversation. Thank you. Then, all right, API key management, then token issuance like OAuth, JOT, right? Fine grain authorization means OAuth scopes. If you go and see your JOT token, and if you open jwt.io and you put your token there, you'll see that encrypted token is decrypted, and it will show you that how many. It will show you a scope of access. It will show your role, session permission. It will tell you the time for which this token is valid, and there is a lot of information on that. I'm not sure I have one token right now, otherwise I would have shown you. But yeah, go try it. If you have a JOT token with you, just go to jw.io and put it there in the debugger. It will show you the information on the right.
I really get confused in one thing. So nowadays there's OAuth 2 and there's an Open ID Connect also, right? So you get an ID token and an access token. So which token plays role in which scenario? Like I really get confused that which plays more relevance in security. That what token I should use to secure my API, whether it's Open ID Connect token or the OAuth 2 token.
So security will always be implied So if you talk about OAuth, right? I mean, OAuth 2.0 or JOT token, basically, these give you a token, basically, right? And that token is decrypted and it is understood and it is by the system, and then it is matched at some level, and then you get the access to something. Then OpenID Connect, and OAuth 2. Okay.
Both gives you JOT tokens. So if you kind of decrypt, you get. I know high level that one is to do with authentication, but one to do with authorization. But you really get confused that which one plays role, and especially in this scenario. I know I want to secure the API.
Both play the role. OpenID Connect will, it can provide you access or authentication, and OAuth is more concerned on the fine-grained authorization, right? If you have OpenID Connect, you might, okay, let's talk about single sign-ons, right? So single sign-ons will give you authentication. Then how you do your fine-grained access, that is more to do with OAuth then, right? You can understand from that perspective. We'll talk about. We'll try to talk about that after finishing this deck. All right, third-party identity provider, which we talk about OAuth, like social logins, right? So you have Okta, you have Gmail, and everything. These all things can provide. It can be an identity provider. Then integration with access management. Access management integration, you can say the access management tab or your user access management tab in your cloud app. Okay. Then XML, SOAP security, WS security. Anybody can explain what is the difference between REST and SOAP in terms of security? Not just it supports XML and supports JSON or something. Anybody? I guess everybody has worked on SOAP.
Ajay, you can unmute if you want. Like if you want to answer this. So Ajay answering like REST is an architectural style. Ajay, you can feel free to unmute and you can speak. Okay, please. So okay, so Ajay is answering like REST is architectural style and SOAP is web-based protocol.
That's right. But I'm more concerned about the security. So okay, SOAP has an implicit.
SOAP I have seen like it plays more emphasis on message level encryption as well. So not even like transport is there, but you can have your. I'm saying more out of the box standard that they provide message level protection even,
Yes.
but
So,
in REST principles they do not have to comply with doing message encryption as such. There are ways to do it, but if you follow the guidelines, it is not provided out of the box by REST principles. But SOAP they do have this feature of, apart from when the SSL connection gets terminated, still the payload can be in an encrypted form.
correct. Perfect. That's perfect answer. So SOAP has implicit enterprise level security. You can say. You might have seen when you see that SOAP request, you will see that there is a envelope piece, right? That can hold that enterprise level security piece. And the answer is right, that you have in SOAP you have that message level encryption, and in REST we really don't care about that. We basically talk about network security, channel security, or securing the VPN or passing it through a VPN or something. But message level encryption, it's an implied concept in SOAP security, and that is the reason SOAP. I'll not say it is now, but because we have so many pieces combined together to secure the REST services. But initially, in initial days, REST and SOAP, the major difference was security. SOAP was more secure, right? All right. How many interview questions did I answer? A lot, I guess. Alerting, including security. So this is mostly alerting, right? I mean, you'd set up monitoring, alerting in terms of unusual behavior, a number of requests, or anything which is unusual to your system, which has not happened, something like that. These all combined, and believe me, there, I guess when I created this PPT, I still might have missed a few things, but this is the day-to-day thing which we come across in terms of API security building blocks. There are other things also in terms of when you talk about, this is specific to APIs, you can say, but when you go to, or when you try to broaden the horizon, you will talk about network security, infra, how you do your BCP and everything. A lot of things are taken care by Cloud Hub itself when you deploy a particular application to two workers. So one worker is the two workers are supposed to be in two different availability zones, right? That is how it handles BCP and services and security. Sorry. All right. Any questions on this slide? No. All right. Then talking about best practices we have, so specific to MuleSoft, right? Identity provider, message integrity, message confidentiality, then availability. Identity providers like Okta, Identity, your LDAP. Message integrity is, so message integrity is though a broader concept. It should I should not have placed it here, I guess. Then message confidentiality is something which that this data is not compromised, right? This data is not corrupt or convoluted. Then availability is, you need to think on, basically these points are to think when you are designing your security in terms of APIs, right? That the API should have an identity provider. I mean, if you want to use a third-party identity provider or something, right? So you should know that this person is authorized and it is authenticated and authorized both. Then this data doesn't get compromised anywhere in between while in transit to any system. Then you have the availability piece. Availability piece is the most important piece, where if something goes wrong, how do you make it available back again, or for what time? What is the SLA of availability in terms of recovery, disaster recovery, or something? If you talk about services like S3 or so they have they will give you an SLA of so if you talk to AWS, they will give you an SLA of 99. They'll start with 99.9 and then it goes on to 99.999, and the number of 9 increases and the probability increases, and the license get costlier as we move on from 99.9 to 99.99.
But Shiva, the availability will be more toward resiliency thing, right?
Resiliency,
rather than security.
No, in terms of security, also, I mean, of course, I mean, how much, because we are talking security right now. So my focus is on part where we, what is the SLA of if something gets broken, right? The backup plan, basically, you can say. Yeah. All right. Then, continuing on this security best practices, we have to enforce secure communications, where we talk about HTTPS, try to make that concept of the data is flowing through HTTPS tunnel itself always, or it might depend on the requirement, right? If your application is inside a VPC, you really don't need an HTTPS connection there, or you don't need a client ID, client secret there. Then design APIs to be resilient to attack, like we talked about SLAs, right, or throttling, and then we can talk about circuit breakers, right, those things. Then avoid putting sensitive data in request URLs, right, when we design URI parameters or we design an API, right, so make sure that we are not providing data in query parameters or something which is crucial, like SSN numbers or some sort of information which comes under the criteria of PHI or PIs, right? Then protect access to APIs. Of course, we are doing that with client ID, client secret, to OAuth tokens, or multiple policies we have in terms of if we managing MuleSoft. Then integrate security testing. You can say, I mean, we talked about, I guess, penetration testing. Then we do load testing. We should also do security testing. So we have one client which does that for us. They have a dedicated team to do that security testing. Then audit access to sensitive data. How you are storing, so let's suppose you are working on a PHI data piece, right? Then how do you audit access, or how do you access control that information? If somebody wants, if I'm an somebody with data science background, and I'm hired to do some sort of analysis on the data, how do you give access, and how do you audit that access, so that who accessed this information or this sensitive data at what amount of time, or what action was taken? Was something updated? Was something deleted? Was something removed? Right? Those things. Audit access, basically. So when somebody has access to some sensitive information, how do you audit how do you audit it, basically, to know that this data was accessed and by who? And there are federal laws. I guess everybody working with US clients and UK clients might know that. Then log and monitor performance and activity, of course, so that if there is some activity which is unusual, it is logged and monitored, and you generate proper alerts for it. All right. Any questions here?
I have one question, maybe not a point listed out here. So based on your experience, so how much it is practical? So generally it is said that you should have defense in depth. So generally, maybe in MuleSoft and API-led connectivity, so at the experience API level, you will terminate the mutual TLS, and then while calling the system API or the as such to say internal API, which are more secured and not exposed publicly, you generally don't do any SSL communication. What I have seen, which is a more pragmatic approach, that no one wants to handle certificates internally, but
Right.
they do say that for end-to-end, if you follow the principle of defense in depth, you should have mutual TLS till the endpoint, last, let's say, in terms of MuleSoft system API. So realistically speaking, did you get any experience in doing that, or like how much difficult is to achieve that? I know it is a good practice, good to have, but how much pragmatic that approach is?
Right. I'll quote an example for that. Okay. So let's suppose there is a requirement from a client, and they are skeptical, and they are very proactive about. They'll talk a lot about security, and the data is confidential and all. Right. You work with any healthcare client, they will tell you that. Now, so generally these guys, what they do, they will go for a VPC rather than deploying applications on the cloud directly. So what happens? So when you use your own self-signed certificate, right, to make an application with an HTTPS call, so the term is right that when the request reaches CloudHub, the TLS is dropped, and then the internal communication happens on HTTP itself. Because from that point, I mean, from the CloudHub, AWS, till that endpoint, the SSL is loaded off. And then again, when you want some data back, it is started back again at the AWS level, and then it comes back to you as the HTTPS connection itself. But the point you mentioned, that the SSL offloading, right, at the point from the entry point to the AWS, I'm talking about specific about MuleSoft right now. So MuleSoft CloudHub is inside a subset of it, right? So the request reaches AWS, SSL is offloaded, and then the endpoint call is actually made. But if you go for a VPC, and if you have your experience system and process APIs inside VPC, right? Because now you are confident enough that, okay, this is my particular network, this is my subnet. Nobody can access this piece without my firewall or load balancer changes, right? I guess we really don't need HTTPS to be there inside that. I mean, I understand that it is good to have, but I don't think it is really needed inside a particular VPC. But the connection from your VPC to your then coming out of VPC, when you come out of VPC, until the point where you are in AWS, right? When whatever routers and switches you are there. I mean, that data is that I guess that they follow that HTTPS approach there, and then of course till the reply comes back to you, it is SSL controlled. I mean, it is an SSL HTTPS based. It's not SSL offloaded in that, but offloading in VPCs happens at the level when you enter the VPC, not at the AWS level itself. Does it?
I mean, I also follow the same line because generally we don't get into hassles of it, but
Yeah.
there are some situations or client wherein, because at the end of the day your solution is hosted on a cloud and it's a multi-tenant. So if really one client is so much apprehensive and so much skeptical about security, so they do mention about that without any practical reason, that even though VPCs is secured, but at the end of the day, it is not running on my premise. It is running somewhere, and on the same host, there will be might be some other customer, right? So when internally you talk about it, is a host which is being used by multiple consumers of AWS.
Of course. And that is why. Correct.
So I was just thinking that from you or your anyone on the panel who has got that realistic experience, which I never had. So just to know, was it like implemented by someone, and if so, what were the challenges? So because I've seen, especially as you mentioning about healthcare. So one of the US client was, because they were totally on premise, and it took a lot of poking to get them convinced about cloud, and then they had all these questions that I want this and that. So just wanted some if someone has that the same experience of implementing mutual TLS end to end, because I never had. And
even I mean, not me also. I mean, I don't think I have ever done mutual TLS till the very end point of it, because I mean, somebody who who decides to go on cloud, I guess they understand this already, right? And they know that this trade-off has to happen, wherein they will have to, I'll not say compromise totally, but till some extent they do have to do that trade-off where security is compromised, because of course it is a multi-tenant cloud, right? You don't own it. I mean, apart from you just create your own private cloud, right? Yeah. And of course, these healthcare clients are really very tough to motivate them to move to cloud. They don't want to do it because their data is very sensitive. There's huge amount of data. I mean, I was working with UHG in the initial days of my career. And believe me, it was like UHG is huge. It's like Fortune 4 right now, right? And they have hell lot of security touch points. They never want to go to AWS or Azure or anything, and they are big. I mean, like huge in terms of data. I mean, we had tables in terms of like 25 GB of space a table used to take, a single table used to take. That level of data we are talking about.
And plus, I mean, the way, unlike in our country, wherein if you get to know that I have cough and cold and you got to get to know about it, doesn't make much of a difference. But in US, if getting just a cough, this is the situation you have. If you and someone gets to know it, they have all the right to sue you. So that is also brings a lot of concern.
Talk about that. I mean, that's a very interesting topic. So I'll just take a 5 minutes dig out from this. So there are policies and there are federal laws, right? And so we were working for retail business. Retail means online pharmacy. So online pharmacy is normal there in US, right? And UHG is like the huge one. So there is a method of renewal. Right? So you take your that RX form, or you can say that prescription form, you give it to you send it, your doctor will itself, they will send it to the pharmacy, online pharmacy business, and they will ship you the medicines. There is a concept of renewals, because every month those medicines need to be refilled, right? Because there's a particular, you buy it for 1 month and again you continue with the prescription and then again it has to be renewed, right? Believe me, I mean, the kind of checks we had in code to just make sure that everything is like nothing is changed, or the brand of it, or the capacity of it in terms of mgs and everything. It was huge. I mean, the whole business can go to dust in with one mistake. That level of security we are talking about. Yeah. I mean, India, it might not be that crucial, but in US it is really, really crucial. All right. Then a few design considerations for security: how you handle the data, accessing end systems, right? I mean, what approach do you follow to connect to your Salesforce or Workday or anything? Then temporary storage of business data, if even it is needed. I mean, normally MuleSoft partially, temporarily holds the data, right? But how do you handle that even? Or what part of it you are logging, exposing? Then why do I have a big source here? Temporary. Okay, yeah. So when we talk about this temporary storage, so we talk about an object store. That's the reason it's there. All right. This is for design consideration, then securing through MuleSoft. All right. I guess this might be the last topic of it. MuleSoft provided components for security. I guess everybody knows all about API Manager, Access Manager, monitoring dashboards, alerting mechanisms. We all have been there, and if not, we will be there, right? Then we talk about all policies, right? Default policies, automated policies, custom policies you want to write. Then there is a classification of policies you have in API managers. So this is mainly about, I mean, there are compliance, transformation, troubleshooting, and QoS, but mostly, I mean, in this meetup, we will talk about a bit on security piece. We'll talk about security, then we talk about basic authentication, the user and password, or blacklisting, whitelisting. I guess you guys are already aware of all these policies. It's just a quick recap of those things and how these are categorized under security policies. Then we have OAuth, Open AM Access Token Performance, Ping Federate. These are all identity providers: Ping Federate, OpenAM, right? Then tokenization and de-tokenization of these sort of policies. Any questions on policies in terms of category of security? And these are the ones. No?
One question we have from Mala, like what is automated policies?
Automated policies are something which you define. If you see this tab, you see the automated policy, right? So if I go on CloudHub and in API Manager, if I go and create automated policy, one single automated policy, right? What it will do, whenever you create a new instance of an application in API Manager, that policy will be applied automatically to that API, like client ID enforcement, right? I can create this I can mark this as an automated policy, and whenever you will create a new instance of any API in API Manager, that will show under automated policy, and it will be automatically applied to that API. That is automated policies. You can have many, right? More of a template kind of thing, you can say, of policies.
One more question Shiva from Balmukun. Is it kind of user data in AWS?
Sorry, I didn't get it.
Yeah. Balmukun, can you elaborate like what point you are saying about? Can you elaborate more on your question? You can also like unmute and you can ask. You're
barely audible.
Yeah, you're not audible.
There's not static from your end.
Okay, just typing it. Yeah, we can't hear you. You might be typing. Okay. Meanwhile, like we can move forward. Like we can take that later on then. Yeah.
Then, of course, we have compliance policies like client ID enforcement and costs, right? I guess you guys understand costs, right? Anybody can explain costs? I guess we had a discussion around this. No one?
I think we discussed last time that so from a web
Where do
domain
you apply?
resource.
Where will you apply a cost policy? In which layer of API connectivity?
Transport layer.
No, I mean which
Experience layer.
experience. Yeah. All right. Then you have quality of service, right? HTTP caching, rate limiting, SLA based, and spike control, which is throttling nowadays. Then you have message logging, and you can create your own custom policies to do whatever type of authentication you use, like a jot token or multi. You can have multiple types of security implied in a custom policy. It can support both a dot token and maybe a basic one. Then you have alerts. You configure alerts on API manager level, of course, or you can go to your monitoring section and you create alerts there. Then it says like API request violates a policy of automated policies, or requests received by API exceed a given number of in period of time. These are alerts at the API manager level. Runtime manager has its own. Then you can go to monitoring section and you can define alerts there. So you can define like if an application is getting redeployed or it is exceeding the utilization or CPU utilization, or the number of requests are getting more in a particular span of time. Those kind of things. Then of course runtime manager is. So if you can see that if there is a lot of 403 happening, right, or there is a lot of 500 happening or 404 happening, some sort of errors are like prevalent and the number is high, then you get an alert from runtime manager. Or the number of mule messages are very high, right? Or the response time, the API is taking a lot of response time to give the response, maybe because the payload is too huge or something is wrong, some system is behaving weird and it's not giving the response in time, right? Then yeah, runtime manager to export data, of course. I guess Splunk and ELK plugins you guys are already aware of. Then you have API event analytics and forwarding. Then I mean, like you can have those analytics in your monitoring section itself. You have to enable the analytics in terms of these APIs we deploy on Cloud App. And you can, if you go to monitoring section, you can download, you can create and download reports to see what the IP sources and everything. You can get that information from there, monitoring section. Then we have security testing areas. When somebody with experience with penetration testing or security testing would be able to elaborate more on this, but these are basic testing areas where you need to check that all the APIs have a client ID, client secret, at least. Then how they are getting authenticated, how much a user is getting authorized, how sessions are getting managed, privacy, architecture, and of course, these all come under security testing areas. It's a very big horizon of piece to understand and imply. Then
OWASP guidelines, they can give a good insight about what all need to be configured.
yes,
Before I've seen that to avoid less number of findings in penetration testing, you follow the guidelines given by OWASP, because the dedicated team also follow the same standards. So and give a lot of idea also about what all attacks are possible, and we give lot many things in detail.
agreed, totally agreed. And guys, this whole thing is important not from the current perspective, but as we progress and how the way we are progressing towards digitalizing everything, this security, and of course, I'm not sure if you, people with security, this security testing, or if somebody has cyber security, somebody who is a cyber security expert, those are really high paying jobs, and there is a reason for it, right? So this piece is really important to understand, and how we apply to it, because today, as a developer, as a means of developer, you will understand things which are like batch processing or those kind of things. But when you grow and you move ahead in your life, you'll understand the importance of security. How, and this is going to be crucial in next coming years. All right. Let's see what takeaway we have. So try to understand the big picture. Like we talked about perimeter security, network security, and everything, right? Those are, and you need to understand security from the perspective of organization and the whole ecosystem. It's not just you applied one policy of client ID, client secret, and your API is secure. It takes much more than that. And things are already in place, but it's always good to know the big picture. Then security, of course, comes at a cost, right? Then there will be side effects. Side effects in terms where if I go and apply a lot of policies to my API just to secure it, there will be performance challenges, right? And the piece where we talked about mutual TLS till the very end of the endpoint, right? We trade off that because we also want performance, and we trade off that. Then, yeah, only recommend what's right and needed. Like which if your application is in Cloud Hub, or if there's a difference between an application being there in Cloud Hub and being there in VPC. So what policy do we really need there? In a communication, the communication which is happening inside VPC, you really don't need client ID enforcement, because it is still secured. It doesn't really need that. It doesn't really need HTTPS. It can work on HTTP, and it's a private subnet area, right? And of course, there's no one way to do it. Like you can have thousands of ways to just secure an API. You don't want to use, let's start. I mean, if I deroute from MuleSoft, or we talk about any other application also, right? There can be a lot of things how you secure your. Every organization has their own way, their own security team, and their own security experts to formalize the method how they are going to secure their data and how they're going to secure their endpoints, right? Then ensure that it is getting tested for security. When you talk about companies like Netflix and bigger firms which are doing a lot of REST APIs and which have a lot of these kind of information, they want to check for every flaw. Every single loophole needs to be tested, and they hire experts for doing that kind of security for them. And these are like really high paying, high cost investments. Then security is not a one-time activity. Do we understand this term? Security is not a one-time activity. Can anybody explain this? No one?
It is to do with the fact that you can't visualize everything from the start, that you want all these things to be implemented, and seeing the way technology is moving in such a fast fashion, you can never view all the possibilities. So it will keep on happening. So that's why they do mention that you have a proper monitoring in place, and to see any kind of anomaly happening in the infrastructure and then kind of act upon. So the latest case, as you mentioned about the CSRF issue, it happened in the AWS. One of the former employees did the breach, and no one can be prepared for that such kind of incident, right? So even they had all the firewalls in place in VPC, all was secured as AWS boast about it, but still there was a flaw, and people were able to breach it. So it's a always an ongoing process.
Yes, it's always evolving, and as the technology is advancing, people are finding ways to find loopholes. And it is not that today you applied client ID, client secret, and tomorrow it will be sufficient. No, that's not happening. The technology is evolving, and we are trying to find other ways to break into systems, right? So it has to be a continuous process. You need to have those checks in place, and you need to evolve your security as we are going in terms of digitalization also, right? Then
One example, so and based on one experience, so even though we implemented all the security, like we were validating the job token, and the API was getting the details of a patient. So the patient call would be something in query parameter. I will send a patient ID, and to validate myself, I'll be sending the token. So we were under the impression that we are all sorted. But then later on, we got to know that even though the token gets validated and I change the patient ID, I can, being me, I can get the data of the patient by just changing the ID. So these all things you can never view it at the start, even though you follow the best guidelines. So you get to know it once it's there in live system, and what flaws are.
yeah, that is why experience has value, right? All right. And okay, follow best practices, leverage proactive monitoring, and implement policies, right? So that is why monitorings and checks are alerts are in place, that if something is unusual, there is some anomaly, you are alerted about it, and you take a proper measure to to mitigate that piece, or to secure that area. Then following best practices that, and be as restrictive as possible, right? Like, you should not allow everything. You should make sure that always you have you know controlled access in terms of where like pagination, right? If there is you don't give all the data at one time. I mean, those kind of things in designing the API itself. Then discuss in the community and let MS know for additional support. If there is anything which is bothering you in terms of security, there is a client who is asking about something very specific, somebody's very keen about security, you can always raise a ticket and get your question answered.
And just to add one more point,
Yep.
and also like if you're talking about all the policies, so one more thing which I've experienced, that your error message should not be very much verbose. Let's say username password is wrong, you should not explicitly say whether the password is wrong or the username is wrong, or giving a very specific error about it. You just say that, and either of the two are wrong, or something which does not give any hint to the end user, because hackers, if we give explicit reason why it failed, they can mimic it and they can tweak it to make it work. So one of the things is that your responses, at least the critical one wherein the authentication is involved, you kind of don't give explicit information, because your application will know it, that something is gone wrong with username or password, but don't show it as is. You can give a more
This is
less verbose user.
this is very specific, and I guess if you try to mimic it from the point, so whenever you expose or the when you reach to the brink of the starting point or the entry point, let's talk about an experience API, right? So if some error happened at system API level, of course that error gets propagated to experience API, but you should not be throwing that error. It has that error should be a generic one, rather than giving out technical details that client ID, client secret is incorrect, or something is wrong with the payload or something, right? It has to be designed in this way, where you are not giving out technical details of what exactly went wrong, but it has to be masked. It has to be a generic error that something went wrong. You might have seen that whenever there is something wrong with any of the websites, something you get one error, something went wrong. You really don't know what. Sometimes it happens that you go to a website, it crashes and it shows you some piece of technical detail that some API was being called and it is failed, right? So that should not happen. That's a very valid point. Thank you for adding it. All right, guys, quiz time.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Shiva, thank you so much for presenting and explaining it too well. So, like, lots of my doubts also clear for API security, and I hope it's useful for others as well. So, I also thank everyone else for attending this. We'll have a quiz session. And thanks to Mohit for your interactive participant in this one. So before going to quiz, let's have a small picture with all. So people, can you like switch on your camera? We can have a picture and then we can move on with our quiz.
Sorry, my video thing is kind of disabled. I'm not able to.
Yeah, that's fine.
People who can turn on the cameras, please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so we have quite good people. I'll take one small picture.
Did you sleep?
Sorry? No, I have.
No, Shiva.
Hope the session was not that boring.
No, it
It
was
is not.
amazing.
It was awesome.
It was amazing.